than usual. That's great. Which classes are you from? Where are you from?
Principles of taxation.
Paris.
You? Same. Anybody from other class of principles of taxation?
Taxation in Kazakhstan.
Taxation in Kazakhstan.
Great. Anybody else from other class?
Tax law.
Hmm?
Tax law.
Oh, okay. So that's it? Principles, taxation in Kazakhstan, and tax law in Kazakhstan? Yes? Auditing? Okay, great. Well, thank you for coming. We have two special guests tonight, Vincent and Jim, and they will, in a few seconds, tell a few more words about themselves. I will just say a little bit of the little thing I know. So they work together as a team in New York. They have a small practice focused on tax law, but also wealth management or wealth transfer. And we will have them here for the next 10 days. They are with us, and today is the first guest lectures that they will deliver. The first one will be by Vincent, and he will talk about the commitments or obligations of the lawyers, but also tax professionals in the US, what they have to do for their ongoing or continuing education.
Tom,
yes?
I might ask to interrupt.
Yeah.
I think we might have shifted it, and I'm going to talk about wealth planning tonight.
That's excellent. That's even better.
That's okay. No, I thought that's what you wanted.
And I think that's perfect. Yes. Yes.
So
that's
sorry to interrupt.
So it's even better topic than I thought. And you will hear things we don't have in Kazakhstan. One of the things we don't have is the estate tax or wealth transfer tax. That's a tax which is applicable in the United States when somebody transfers property to their heirs or children or grandchildren. In Kazakhstan, such transfers of property are currently free of tax. You don't tax it. We may tax it if the property is transferred to somebody living outside of Kazakhstan and then becomes taxable. You will hear from Vincent's presentation how big can be the cost of that tax and what can it mean. The reason why it may be relevant for us, although we live in Kazakhstan, we don't have such a tax right now. Kazakhstan government has a big problem with the budget. We just experienced devaluation this week. That's part of the reason there is not enough money to be maintaining the currency at the same level as we are used to it. So government, to save that money, because they would use the foreign currency to be buying basically Kazakhstani tenge, they don't have enough foreign currency and not enough money in the budget to be able to afford it. And part of it is basically taxation, to have enough money in the budget to be able to afford to spend money. So we have deficit in the state budget, and the only way to fill it in is basically taxes. Other alternatives is issuing bonds or creating more debt for Kazakhstan, but it is not sustainable. So it may be that in the future Kazakhstan will have a similar tax, and the ideas that we'll hear today may be useful in your future career, that you will already understand, aha, I can do something with that. The second reason may be that some of you may move outside of Kazakhstan and you may live or practice as professionals in the countries in Europe or in the United States, and they have exactly these type of taxes. Okay, let's say you acquire United States citizenship, this will become very relevant for you. Okay, then Jim will have his presentation afterwards, and he will talk about, as I understand, is an introduction to the.
Vincent, if I may, just 1 second. Do you think it makes sense, perhaps, introduction of sources of U.S. tax law and kind of setting the format?
You want to go first?
I think that might make some
For
sense.
a foundation?
I'm flexible.
Yeah.
What is your preference? What do you want to hear first? Introduction to the United States tax system, and then the planning, or vice versa?
Introduction.
Introduction. I think that makes sense. So let's do it like that.
He'll tire you out. You'll be easy on me.
Yes. And so you already heard what Jim will talk about. So we will make a little break in between. So so we can get refreshments, and we can then continue until 10 p.m. So happy Valentine's, girl. Okay, so enjoy.
Good evening. I was thinking.
You want a mic?
No.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay in the back?
Yeah.
Yes, you can hear me. As Professor Balco said, Jim Constantino, Vincent, Teahan. A little bit about our background. My education, I have a bachelor's in accounting. I have a master's in accounting. I have a JD, I'm an attorney, and I have a master's of taxation from New York University, which is an advanced law degree, and I'm also a certified public accountant. Out of school, I went to work for a firm, Deloitte, which I think you have actually an office here in Almaty.
Any Deloittes in this room?
Yes. I spent about 4.5 years with Deloitte in their international tax unit and traveled quite a bit around the world, spending most of my time in the Middle East. Our firm represented Aramco, the Arabian American Oil Company, the consortium that runs and explores, pumps, and ships the oil from Saudi Arabia. I am from Dutchess County, New York. That is about 100 kilometers directly north of New York City. And when I decided, and Vincent may comment on this in a moment, after spending a time with the big firm, I wanted my own practice. It was something I always wanted to do. So I effectively went home and started a practice while in Dutchess County. Now, I was on the income tax side, civil audit side, criminal investigation side of the practice. Vincent was in wealth transfer, wealth preservation, estate tax. We met working on some cases together, some very important cases. Cases that got some national recognition just because of the nature of the case, and it was quite unusual. And from
Not
that-
because of the nature of the attorneys.
No, absolutely not. But we formed a partnership. Today we have 7 lawyers in our firm. We also have an accounting function. And I also employ several former IRS, Internal Revenue Service. That's the group that manages taxes at the federal government level in our firm as well. And Vincent, you can speak about your background.
Yes, my name is Vincent Teahan. I was here last year, and for some reason people let me come back. I came to Almaty through the Center for International Legal Studies, which is a program for lawyers of 20 or 25 years experience, which takes place in law schools in former Soviet Union and former Eastern Europe, Soviet bloc, going through the former Soviets, Central Asia, right to Mongolia. And I had my first assignment in Latvia in 2008. They take us and they ask us to teach in law schools like KIMEP. The idea is to try to spread how we Americans do things with our laws to countries which are evolving their own systems of jurisprudence. And I should say without any nationalism that while I'm a patriotic American, I do not suggest American tax law as a model for Kazakhstan or many American laws. I think people ought to get the kind of laws that they wish to have in accordance with notions of international justice and democracy and representative government. But I do not intend to be a missionary for how we Americans approach the tax law. Indeed, almost to the opposite. I think that people in a country with a terrific emerging economy like Kazakhstan can learn from the mistakes of the United States. As far as how I found my way here, my younger daughter, who is now 16, went off to school outside Chicago. And so my wife, who's a doctor, and I were left with an empty house and some time on our hands. And I said, could I go back to teaching at an international law school? And she, I think, would like to have the house to herself last year. And she said, sure. And I said, I'd like to go to a stan. I've always wanted to go to one of the countries in Central Asia. I got interested reading ancient history and medieval history about the various empires that occurred here, and particularly the Mongol Empire. And so I was delighted when I got the chance to teach at KIMEP last year. And again, I had such a good time that I told my law partner, this is a very nice opportunity to meet good people and do what we hope are useful things and learn from you, so that's why we're here. For my own practice, I went to, many years ago, I guess 1967, I started college at Yale College in Connecticut. and I went to Yale Law School after that. I am the least important of many important people who went there at the time I was there, like Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. I sat next to her in one class, but she is going to be Queen of the United States, and I am going to be a lawyer who watches his turkeys and ducks in his backyard. But I think, in a sense, I'm happier. We felt about the late 1980s when I left New York City and moved up to the country outside of New York, where I guess the term in Russian would be people have dachas. Am I saying it correctly?
Yeah.
That we have a community of people who moved up from New York City who have money and business, and they don't necessarily want to get their work done in New York City. And James and I had the chance to work together on different areas of the tax law, and we thought we would form what would pass for a boutique to take care of people so they would not have to go to Manhattan. But we don't claim to be fancy big city lawyers. We'll just try to do our best to fill you in on what the American laws are in this field. I guess I should turn things back over to James.
When I got the outline for the areas that Professor Balco is interested in me speaking about, I can tell you that I described my degrees to you for a reason. That constituted 9 years of education. We're going to try to cover it in about 4 hours over the next few days. So I sent some materials. Obviously, the topical matter is vast. But I think if you could take away from the subjects we'll discuss a big picture of our system, the source of our laws, how we handle an audit or an investigation, which, by the way, I told you I had some international experience, and some of those strategies and techniques you would apply no matter what jurisdiction you were dealing with. Of course, you have different laws and different rights in the U.S. We'll talk a little bit about that. What happens when a case becomes a criminal case? So there's a civil investigation where all the taxpayer is exposed to is income tax or additional taxes, maybe some interest, maybe some penalties. But what happens when the government wants to put you in prison? How does that change? What are the events that make that happen? How does the government pick a case? And one way we're going to discuss this through the theme, through the next few days, the lectures, is we'll talk about some cases we've had in our office. A case that started as a civil case, went through an extent, the case started in 2006. It's an ongoing case right now. And it probably won't be fully resolved for at least another 5 years. Why is that? And we'll talk a little bit about it, and you'll see this. Currently, there are some initiatives by our Internal Revenue Service, particularly in the criminal arena, and I'll discuss some of those with you, and you'll hopefully get some kind of a focus as to what our government is looking for in terms of raising revenue and targets of their investigations. And just to make sure we put it all in there, whistleblower. We have some legislation that you can get a reward for reporting someone to the authorities. To date, the largest such reward, so that is, you know someone who's cheating on their taxes, you call up the government and you say, I know what Tom Balco's been up to. And they conduct an investigation and they prosecute, sorry Tom, somebody else. They prosecute this person and you can receive a reward. Today, the largest reward was $104 million US. That was the bonus. So there's a great motivation to have people get turned in. I might add one quick comment on that. And here's what's really, really neat about our whistleblower law. You don't have to have what we call clean hands. You could have been a participant in the fraud. But if you run to the government, you have some exposure. You can still qualify under certain circumstances for the reward. Perfect country. Cheat, keep it, turn in your partner, and
Plan your estate after you
and then plan your estate.
and move to Almaty.
So let's talk a little bit about the United States, the law, and how do we, how does tax law come into, how is it created, how's it managed, what are the sources of guidance? And there are many, many. Your materials, and I apologize for this, they are not complete. They weren't, there was so much to put in. What I tried to do is give you some reference materials from a bunch of different sources that would give you this big picture. The United States Constitution is the main document from which all of our government and all of our laws ultimately come from. 1787, the United States Constitution is passed. Within the Constitution, yes, we have actually copies of it. If you really have a hard time sleeping, start reading that. Anyway, the Constitution is enacted, and any power of our government, any power given to our government, must ultimately derive from the Constitution. If the power isn't given to the government in the Constitution, it doesn't exist. Our government consists of three branches. We have the legislative branch, makes the law. We have the executive branch, that's headed by the President, President Obama. They execute the law, carry out the law. And then we have a judiciary branch that is used to test the law, to measure the law, enforce the law through the judiciary. And that starts with our U.S. Supreme Court, the highest court of the land. Taxes in the United States. We have a lot of taxes in the United States, and there's taxes based on just about anything you can think about. Now we're going to talk a lot about income taxes. That's the focus of this presentation. But we have taxes based on value of property taxes. And we have taxes at multiple levels. You've got the federal government, we've got our various 50 states, we have municipalities, our states are broken into different political subunits, counties, towns, cities. If you're lucky enough to live in New York City, you get to pay federal income tax, New York State income tax, and New York City income tax. 3 income taxes.
I'll jump in and say the marginal rates for a high-earning person in New York City between the federal, the state, and the city approach 50%, and in some cases, because of phase-outs, go over 50%. Perhaps not a system you want to imitate here.
Would the taxes paid at a local level, state level, be used for, could you get a credit for those taxes for the federal level?
Yes, that is correct. The taxes paid are deductible, and there's a distinction between a deduction and a credit.
So it's not a deduction, it's not a credit, it's just a deduction.
That's correct.
Like an expense.
That is correct. Our tax is based on net income, and we'll get into that just a little more. But we have taxes on payroll, on unemployment, on the government provides various medical insurance. We have Medicare taxes. Within the executive branch, there are various agencies. Congress, our legislature, passes a law. The executive branch enforces it. For this discussion, the important branches include the Internal Revenue Service. Well, that's actually under the Department of the Treasury. So you have the Treasury, you have the President, the Executive, and then there's a Department of the Treasury, and there's Internal Revenue Service. But there are some taxes that are enforced and collected by other agencies. The Department of Justice, for example, collects alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. And Homeland Security is responsible for customs and tariffs. But the tax, again, we're going to be focusing on today, our discussion is income tax. There's a couple of unique aspects of our law. And you'll see as we get into some of the more detail how that complicates both representing a taxpayer and enforcement. For example, in the United States, you are taxed on worldwide income. I leave the United States, I get an offer from Mr. Balco, and I come here to Almaty, and I work here and earn all of my income from Kazakhstan sources. Doesn't matter. I must pay U.S. income tax on all of that income. The source is irrelevant. If I have a bank account in Kazakhstan, but I live in New York, that interest, on the account is taxed in the United States, worldwide income. There was, and I believe this is still the case, one other country in the world that taxes worldwide income. And it's a little African nation, Eritrea?
Eritrea?
Eritrea, yeah, Eritrea. It's in Western Africa.
Eastern.
Yeah, Eastern Africa. Okay, you'll get it right there.
Sorry.
But all other countries, Western Europe, into South America, you're taxed on source, but not out of source income.
Maybe I comment on Kazakhstan, also for you to know about Kazakhstan.
Yes.
Kazakhstan will follow the residency principle, but we will not link residency automatically to the citizenship. So one will be a resident of Kazakhstan and subject to worldwide taxation, but only, there are basically two main options. Only if you reside in Kazakhstan for more than 150 days in a calendar year, that's one option. Or if you are a citizen of Kazakhstan, so passport is still important in nationality. It's one of the criterions in a second test we have, which is called central vital interest in the law. And it has three criteria. You are either national or you have a residency permit, equivalent of a green card in the United States. Second criterion, you have a family living in Kazakhstan, relatives. And the third criterion, you have available real estate. Either you own it or you are renting it. You must meet all the three criteria, and then you are considered to have a central vital interest. So citizenship is also important, but it's not the only criterion like in the United States.
Well, actually, that's very interesting because at the federal level, because you're taxed on worldwide income as long as if you're a citizen or a permanent resident, you hold a green card. Worldwide income. There are a lot of people who hold green cards in the United States, with the United States, even though they don't reside in the United States, but they like to have the green card because it allows them immediate and unlimited access to the country. I say in theory, they're subject to worldwide tax. The other concept you were mentioning, Tom, is we use the term domicile. And where we see the term domicile being a second test for taxation is at the state level. So in New York State, if you're a resident of New York State, and there's a test involved with it, and it's an objective test. If you own a permanent place of abode and you live in the state more than half a year, you're a New York State resident, and you're taxed on worldwide income, New York State. But the other is domicile, and having those connections that you described, but they don't have to be objective. You could be a domiciliary of New York State, and you don't have to own a house, you don't have to have a relative, you could virtually have no contacts. It's an unusual situation, it can happen. We've litigated such cases. Illinois and California are also states that have this concept of domicile. But the important issue is the basis of taxation. And this notion that you're taxed on net income, you take your gross income and then various expenses that are allowed under the Internal Revenue Code to reduce your gross income to a net, and then the tax rate is applied to the net. Our rates are progressive. So, well, maybe you know this or you don't. About 48% of the people in the United States today, 47% of the people who earn income, pay no income tax. The prediction is in that about less than 10 years, the majority of people who work in the United States and earn, I know this may seem surprising to you, the majority of the people will not pay any income tax. And that gives rise to a very serious issue that we're going to be confronting, where you have 51% of the people who pay no tax voting on how much people should pay. Guys like Teahan, how much should he pay? People who don't pay, right, that's it. So
Take it all.
in the state of California, they have the highest state income tax rates in the country, and the issue was presented to the legislature. The legislature of California said, this is insane. We're not going to raise our income tax rates. These high earners who are they? They're business people, they're producers, they're manufacturers. We need them here. We have the semiconductor industry in Northern California. We don't want to tax these people out of our state. The governor put that issue on the ballot so that all the citizens could vote. And interestingly, that state is in a situation, they actually voted to impose the tax. So you have people who aren't paying tax voting the tax rates on people who do. That'll be a continuing development. Types of taxpayers. In the United States, there's only 5. 5. An individual, a corporation, a partnership, a trust, and an estate. That's it. You're one of those things. If you're alive, you're an individual. If you're dead, you're an estate. That's it. That's how that happens. Under our law, the moment you die, you become an estate. And then we have some different legal entities, and we won't get into that, it's beyond this, but so for example, we have concept legal liability companies, fairly new in our country. They started in 1977, but they are taxed either as a partnership or as a corporation. Or in some cases as a sole proprietorship. 5 types of taxpayers. Non-residents if they're lucky, they get to be taxed in the United States if they earn an income in the United States and on certain source income. Overlay on that, a treaty. A treaty. The United States has a tax treaty with the UK. There's 26 treaties. And that treaty, so you have US tax law as your primary source, and then you also then have to look beyond that to see if there's a treaty, particularly when you're dealing with international. And those treaties sometimes set rates, they define what's taxed, what's not taxed. But when you're dealing with multinationals, you've got to be aware of the existence of a treaty. Reporting. Taxpayers in the United States must report their income, and there's different types of reports. Some reports are just information. I'll give you an example. If I'm a bank and you have a bank account in my bank and I pay you interest, at the end of the year I send a document to the Internal Revenue Service that says you earned X amount of interest. So they have a document from the payor. That's just information returns. Very severe penalties for not reporting information returns. Of course, the most popular kind of report is the income tax return. That is the document where you tell the government, this is all my income, these are my deductions, and here's what I owe you in tax. Social policy. Our government loves to use income tax to engineer policy. For example, research and development. We want to encourage people to conduct research and development of new products, new drugs, so they'll provide credits and benefits. A recent law, not particularly popular, is that we call the Affordable Care Act. It was President Obama's effort to have every American covered by insurance. If you violate that under certain circumstances, you get hit with an additional income tax, or you use income tax as a